We're going to have many, many lovely days, Betty. We could be together for another 50 years. Just think of that.
Michael, it's 50 years. Do you believe that? 50 years since we did. Some others do have them.
No.
And amazingly, we've never actually talked together, have we, about the show, actually spoken together. And I want to know, how did it come about for you? How did Frank Spencer, that incredible character, come about?
It had already been turned down by Ronnie Barker, because Ronnie was a verbal comedian.
Yes, yeah. Four candles.
Four candles, that's it. And hysterical and a wonderful artist. And then it was offered to Norman Wisdom.
Really?
Yep. And he didn't find it too amusing. So therefore, I was then offered it third in line. And I didn't mind at all. I mean, it was very flattering, but I saw the germ of an idea as I was doing a play called No Sex Please, We're British, and the characterisation I created for that role was very inept, very innocent, and so there was a basis for me, but I wanted it to be more physical. I wanted to bring a physicality into it, but still keep reality. That was the main word, and that's quite hard with comedy to think that that's the way you can do it. So what we needed was an actress to play the wife. I wanted him to be married because the voice I was using was obviously very light and quite effeminate.
Good evening. Booked a room for the weekend. Mr. Spencer.
Spencer.
And Mrs.?
Oh, yes, I forgot. Mr. and Mrs.
But it was an innocence.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with his sexuality. There was an innocence about, and wide-eyed. So it was a childlike character. And so we started to. They wrote in Betty, the character, to be his wife, and I said that should show them that he's a married man, and we went back to the courting days, and that was all written in. So then the challenge began to find the lady, the actress, that could play this role. And it was...
Did you find her?
No.
No, what a shame that was.
It was. And there lies the tragedy. And I don't know how... It's no wonder we've never spoken to any young actresses, all of whom were very good. But there wasn't until we saw the last person, who was you, walk in the door. And it's like we buy a home or a flat, and you walk in, and you know as you walk across the threshold, before you've looked at the rooms, you know there's something about the place. I'm going to buy this. As you walked in, and we just looked at each other, and you started to giggle, but there was because you were a serious actress, which you've got to remember that, and that this was the girl.
Really?
Yeah.
You knew?
We didn't read. We didn't. No.
I remember there was a script.
Yeah.
But
no,
I didn't actually touch it because we
talked
just
for
talked
about
and
an hour.
laughed.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Wow.
Because when I looked around, Michael Mills, producer, was asleep. And he was so excited about the casting, about both of us together. He knew he had a tough job ahead. I used to help on the storylines and try and think of things physically that I could possibly do and we could add. And Raymond Allen would very cleverly write round them. I mean, he was the genius writer, Raymond. He was, for me, the innocence
He was Frank Spencer.
perfection. He was. His life was. And he got the news that he was accepted by the BBC when he was a cinema cleaner, and he got a message, and he'd talk like that, and he'd go, "Oh, I can't believe it. They want me at the BBC."
Sweet.
And I'd listen to him and I'd think, "Oh, I can see how I could do this." I took away the West Country and I just did it.
Yeah. But he wrote it, didn't he? He lived with his mother and father on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
And he wrote it in the shed at the bottom of the garden.
Yes.
And he used to telephone it through to the BBC from the call box at the end of the road.
Oh, we had meetings for months and months. It was primitive, and it was, but he'd come up to London and we'd work for hours on these lines. There's a serious side to this. And the characters, they actually were serious. Someone who cannot get a job, someone who can't achieve anything. If you talk about it, it's almost tragic.
Yeah.
So I've got a piece here which Raymond Allen himself wrote, and it's about Frank Spencer as a growing up. This is just a slice of it. His working life consists of an endless stream of jobs, including errand boy, potato picker, kitchen porter, office cleaner, hospital cleaner, cinema cleaner, waiter, shop assistant and deck chair attendant. He even tried for a career in the forces, but was rejected by the Army and Navy. The RAF gave him a chance and he enlisted in April 1965, but they soon changed their minds and discharged him the following month. Short spells as a bus conductor, a coalman, factory worker, bingo caller, night watchman, stoker, park keeper, gardener, painter and hot dog salesman followed, before a change of direction saw him enter a monastery in 1969 with a view to taking holy orders. He was soon rejected for the priesthood. So now you start with that basis and try and believe that this character actually lived.
Yeah.
But to do this show properly, that's what we had to do.
Yes.
And then believe that this lovely young lady was willing to marry him.
Didn't she walk him home?
Yes.
As opposed to him walking
That's
her home?
it, because the horse had trodden on his foot, which had actually happened on the shoot. The horse was so friendly, he just went like that with his foot on mine to say goodbye to me, and I couldn't walk for a week.
Love it.
To do that truthfully, it's touching.
Yes. And a lot of it was, Michael. A lot of... I mean, for instance, when Betty told you that she was having a baby and you misconstrued it totally.
Yeah.
And you said, well, you might have told me.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Off
not...
that line. Well, you could
You're
have told me.
going to hear the patter of tiny feet, you said.
I'm not having another cat in this house.
Yeah. And that, to me, is beautiful comedy.
Yeah.
It's not self-congratulatory. It's what we felt as actors and what we could do with this. And that's, I swear I picked it all up from silent movie days that used to impress me.
Really?
Knowing. Yep. Buster Keaton, and who I worked with.
Did you?
I worked with him on Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, the movie. And it was you meet someone like that and you hear their stories in the lunch hour. We all go into his caravan and listen to him.
Wonderful.
But his films, and Laurel and Hardy,
Did you meet them?
No, I didn't. No, they refused to see me. No, I didn't meet them. But they were. These people are still funny today.
Yeah.
They still make me laugh. They still make today's generation laugh of youngsters. It was extraordinary comedy. and physical. The stunts that Buster Keaton did, Harold Lloyd, all these fellas were
Amazing.
icons.
Amazing.
And I suppose they just stayed in my head.
I'm torn between two things here. One is to say, oh, it's frightfully dangerous and he shouldn't do it, and my word, he's breaking his neck 4 times a day and that sort of thing. But the truth of the matter is that neither Michael nor I are really quite as stupid as we look. And we wouldn't do things unless they were very, very carefully prepared, very carefully thought out, and all the possible precautions against risks being taken. That's my job as the producer, and that's his job as an actor to see that he don't do anything that's going to kill himself.
Oh, God! Now! Betty, I can see my slippers!
Rocking. Oh. It's all right.
You couldn't do those stunts now, could you?
You just wouldn't be allowed to do that. And because there must have been accidents with, or people may try to copy. You can't say, this is not just as I've come through, this is not recommended for anyone at home. Only me, only me. Can you remember when it first started to take off? Because we didn't know anything. We pre-record 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance. And when did you notice that?
Well, that was the funny thing, because in the beginning, it was quite a slow burner, wasn't it? And then suddenly it just took off. And it was such a surprise to me, because there is nothing more extraordinary than a successful comedy show. I mean, suddenly you become a household name. And it suddenly, for you, it was very, very hard, because you became a bit of a recluse, I remember, because so many of our eminent impersonators of the day were all doing Betty and all of that stuff. You know, they were all...
Who was that?
Who was that? No, but you know what I mean. They were all doing it, weren't they? They were all. And so you couldn't go out.
I could have had my eye out there. I took Betty out the other day. I took her to the pictures to see Joyce. She wasn't gonna eat a goldfish now. You thought I wasn't gonna do this one, didn't you?
It was impossible.
In the club, we go in after shooting, and I watched Mike Yarwood, who was a well-known
Mike Yarwood, yes,
impersonator of the time.
Yeah.
He would. We were having a lager after the show, and after the recording,
I've never
and
had
I'd
a
look
lager.
up and like, you haven't. I looked over the other corner of the bar, and there's Mike Yarwood. Didn't take his eyes off me, and so every move, and I thought, this is very strange, but he was
studying.
And then the next week, it was on the Mike Yarwood show.
Hello, Betty, Jessica. It's Daddy on the telly again. I hope I do better on this show than I did last time. I had a lot of harassment. I got booed by the clapometer.
And I remember you before a show, you would be so worked up. I couldn't approach you. You'd be going up and down the back of the studio at the BBC, just literally in the zone, as they say, and I couldn't even wish you good luck. You know, I couldn't come anywhere near you because you were so, you know, in there.
I have to get in that zone of I'm married to this woman, I have got this situation, and by the time you walk out on that set,
You're there.
hello, you're there, and there's no other way you can talk, and you are this character. I'm frightened to do it because you are there, and you feel safe because you're in that world of that man and that woman and the things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
In those days, it was massive. We had 22 million to start with, 22 million people watching, and we went up to 24 or 25 million on the Christmas shows.
Yeah.
But I was living, I was separated from my wife at that time, and I was living in a little council flat, Mews, in Kensington, by the railway sidings next to Olympia. And I'd lived very quietly there, 4 cushions to sleep on and an aquarium, and watching the guppies being born, which was my life. And I'd go round the corner and suddenly I became someone in the laundrette. And I had, this is from this to what it became. I couldn't do my washing. I had to do it in the sink. I couldn't go to the laundrette. The drying was nearly impossible, but that's success.
Yeah.
And it was as ridiculous as that, that you couldn't go in a pub.
No.
But it was wonderful. I'm sitting here not moaning. It's funny. It was beautiful.
What is it, do you think, that's made some mothers endure all these 50 years? What do you think has just kept it?
It's something that a whole family can sit down and watch, which is, and it's not, of course it's frustrating if you want to look at it really seriously, of someone who can't retain a job and think, but if it's done as Raymond wrote it, very, I thought, cleverly, and we felt, and our producer Michael Mills, who was the best, and in the last series, Sid Lotterby, who'd done Last of the Summer Wine, for instance. I mean, they were brilliant producers. So we were privileged to be working with people like that. We had the top cameramen, we had the top lighting men, the top sound people. That you see their names now. They're icons in the
Comedy world.
Comedy world, so all those things go to make something very professional.
Yeah.
And the older people who remember us, they say, I was watching you, Michael, the other day with my grandson, and he was laughing as much as I was. I do impressions, and I'm available. Okay.
But did it change?
Yes, I think by the time we got to the second set, Michael Mills had moved on to ITV, and so he'd left the BBC, and we had a new producer, Sid Lotterby, who was a word comedy director mainly. There wasn't a lot of physical comedy that he worked with before, and I think I started to be too knowing as Frank. When I watched it afterwards, I thought, he's in a courtroom and he's being his own defence in a case of something I'd done on a motorcycle and he was using legalese words in Frank's voice, and I thought, this is too clever. I'm being smart. It's too smart for the room. And I thought, no, you come to the end of it, Michael. And we decided between us that we'll not maybe take it any further. But there was still some lovely moments, but I just felt I was not the innocent and the completely honest character that I'd started out as.
That's very, very perceptive of you to acknowledge that. I mean, that's quite something, Michael.
Well,
I haven't heard you say that before. But you've been so clever, Michael, all your career. You know, that could have been a noose around your neck, that character. It really could have. But you then branched off to do all your wonderful musicals that you did,
well,
and
we
Broadway
limited.
and...
Yeah, we limited. And for you too, to be able to act and be accepted as a serious actress again, actor, we'll call you.
Well, for me, it was a bit hard, actually.
Yeah.
It was a bit hard. Betty was a bit of a noose.
Yeah.
And I was being offered all those kind of characters.
Yeah.
For a long while, I had, you know, people didn't have the imagination that you could actually be an actress and do other things. It was a bit difficult for me.
But you were a theatrical actress. You were with the Royal Shakespeare before you came to me. So you could go back to theatre, and theatre is my greatest love.
Yes.
Without it,
Yes.
and I think it's
absolutely
yours.
It's where you
because
learn your craft.
You're with the audience. It
Yeah.
was like on the recording night to have that live audience and hear somebody else laugh at what we were doing rather than just Michele. It was. But that's all we've got in rehearsal. It's us.
Sure.
And
so you don't know.
No, you've
You
got to
don't
be
know.
very careful laughing at yourselves.
Very, very.
And when you hear it in the studio, I mean, you weep with joy. At the end of the show, you're punching the air like you've won the FA Cup. It's so exciting.
I want to see it through Woody's eyes. My little grandson was 6. He's never seen it, and he doesn't even know that I'm an actress. He's in for a horrible shock. Poor little soul.
Your grandson.
Yeah.
And I was playing along the floor yesterday and falling down the stairs, and he was hysterical at this because this silly man.
Yeah.
But he still had. He was still knew I was a grown up, but it was because I was a grown up and behaving like we used to do hospital visits, and the children, I'd say to them, hello, because I'd never do the character out of work, but in a hospital I used to do it with the children's wards, and I'd say, are you married? And they would go, and they're really still, they've got tubes all around, and they go, no, and they'd start to laugh. And that, it's hard to talk about, because you've got that power of communication and making people laugh. It's
precious.
It's precious, yes. It's what you work for. It's what you long for. It's what you dream of as a child, the actor, that you're going to become successful.
Sure.
And we had it.
We had a lovely time, didn't we, Frank?
It was. Well, good night then.
Good night, then.